Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Parleh Show presented by Bet99. I'm Vartanian, filling in for our main man, Bobby Conway. He's on vacation. He will be back next week. My co-host today, as always, is the one, the only former NHLer, our betting guru over at Bet99, Matthew Barnaby. Barney, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. It's a beautiful day here in Ottawa. So right after the show, hitting the links, hopefully going to make some cash today. It was a good day yesterday, but we had a little rain at the end. So we normally do a chip off the 18th deck, and everyone bets. We actually got into throwing paper airplanes, and who could throw it the furthest would cash in. It's I'd never seen it at a golf club before, but if there's gambling, we will find a way.
Barney, ever told you this? But you're living the life, man. You're living the life I want to live.
I'm also 30 years older than you, so
yes,
in 30 years you'll be living that life as well, buddy.
That's great, Barney. I'm happy you're having a great time. Let's talk about the Vegas Golden Knights, who are probably still having a great time after winning the Stanley Cup, the first in franchise history. Just 6 seasons. That's all it took to get them there. On to Game 5. It was just complete dominance. 9-3? 9-4, 9-3 to win a Stanley Cup. It's an incredible run that this team put together.
Well, it was nice not to have to sweat that one out. It was just a dominating performance. And I think it was Marchessault that scored. No, it was Mark Stone that scored at one point.
Yeah.
And you could just tell they won the game. And he knew that they won the Stanley Cup and couldn't be happier for him, the whole management team. It's just been a well-oiled machine, helped by the NHL and expansion, the way it should. When you're spending, $650 million to $1 billion on a franchise, you shouldn't have to suffer like the 92 or 93 Ottawa Senators did in teams in the past. Give them a team that can compete, and they took advantage of all the rules. I mean, absolutely all of the rules, but good for them. They said it would never work in Vegas a long time ago, and the first ever sports team in Vegas, professionally, a hockey team, nonetheless, wins the first championship. I can't even imagine what that cup looks like now. I would not want to be drinking out of it.
Listen, these expansion teams need help. If you look at the Thrashers, even Columbus, it wasn't the same situation. And people will be like, well, they had, they were able to get some good players. If you go look at that, the first roster that the Vegas Golden Knights had, no one was saying this is a Stanley Cup contending team. No one said that. It's easy to say it now, but that's after Bill Foley, George McPhee. They made all these fantastic moves to bring in the right players. And we'll talk about that because I think what they've done so far in a short amount of time is spectacular. But what I do want to touch on for both the Panthers and the Golden Knights, okay, they have a ton of skill. They've got speed. They got goal scorers. But it's the physicality on both sides. Both teams have that in common. I think Vegas more than Florida. But do you think, is that still, even in 2023, the recipe to win a cup is to have big, physical, hulking players?
Well, I think I've said it many a times, and I will continue to reiterate it. No other sport changes from the regular season to the postseason like hockey in the NHL. You need skill. You need a good goaltender. You need all of those things. But yes, you need grit. You need physicality, and you need guys that are going to play through pain and do anything to win a cup. And that's blocking shots. That's being physical. You don't have to run around. I think Florida got a little bit out of their element, trying to make it too tough a series and probably went a little above and beyond. But Vegas is a very skilled team, and they did not shy away one bit from the physicality. The main thing is playing that physicality in between the whistles, which they did to perfection. But yeah, I want a big team. I want a strong team. I want a skilled team. You can be the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah, I mean, here in Toronto, obviously they've gone for skill for quite a long time under Kyle Dubas. It really just hasn't worked out. You can have all the skill in the world, but you need guys who can hit. You need 4 lines rolling, essentially, and that's what Vegas did because every single series, it was a different line that was producing. This Vegas team is phenomenal. You talked about injuries. I mean, what Paul Maurice said about Matthew Tkachuk and Aaron Ekblad, I'll just reiterate. Tkachuk, broken sternum in Game 3, still played Game 4. Aaron Ekblad, broken foot in the Boston series, 2 shoulder dislocations, torn oblique, and the guy was still averaging 23 minutes of ice time. So, I mean, credit to those guys. But for you, when you played, did you have to play through a serious injury, or did you know anybody else who played through maybe a serious injury and you're trying to figure out how is this happening right now?
Yeah, I mean, I in the Montreal series back in '98 when we swept them, it was our first round. I separated my shoulder in Game 2, and I remember, after the game, just being in excruciating pain, and it would pop in, pop out, and literally would feel like it was hanging by your ankle. and you'd go home, you'd ice it back to the hotel, whether you're on the road or at home, ice it all night long. You'd get up the next day, you wouldn't practice because you couldn't practice. And then the next day they'd shoot you up with cortisone and you wouldn't feel anything. Your shoulder felt like the $6 million man getting a new part put into your body. So you'd play through it and you'd go through that till you were knocked out. And I've seen guys play with broken feet and broken hands and separated shoulders, all of the above. It's what you do. It's kind of masochistic. It's ingrained in you. You've seen it since we've been kids and we've heard about the injuries. To play with a broken sternum is a new level of tough. I've had a broken sternum and I couldn't breathe for 3 weeks. I couldn't take a deep breath. And I remember being at home and our coach at the time and general manager and doctor saying, "Oh, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. We've done the x-rays." Well, 3 weeks later, we went back in and we could see the crack right in the middle. And I don't know how he even skated. I really don't know how he played. And in one of those games, he played really, really well. But in the end, you could just tell it wasn't Matthew Tkachuk at 100%. And I'm just glad he didn't play in that last game. It wouldn't have made a difference. Could have got hurt worse. But that's what we're in grade to do. And it's amazing to see. It's kind of one of those things when you win a cup, we wait to hear about all the injuries because they're just plenty.
Yeah, and listen, there was a report that his brother Brady had to help him out of bed and help him put his equipment on. I mean, if that was me or just a regular human walking the street, not even suit up for a game, you wouldn't be able to get out of bed. But it's so hard for. Go ahead.
I'd be more surprised that Matthew wasn't trying to help Brady get out of the bed from a hangover the next day.
Probably.
And
big
and his dad.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. So I try and understand what you guys put yourselves through and how do you, but like as a player, I mean, how do you get your mind right to think, listen, I have this severe injury that can probably get worse if I don't take care of it, but I need to be out there and play with my team. How do you get to that point?
Well, it's funny you say that because yesterday I woke up and I scrolled through TikTok and whatever, and I saw our other ambassador, George St. Pierre, and he was just talking about a cold tub. Now, it's not the same thing as playing through a broken sternum, or certainly he's played with a lot of pain in his sport that he does, probably more than we do. It's mind over matter. It's really just sometimes almost tricking yourself and trying to focus on something else. And the focus is, how do I get through this? How do I manage the pain? How do I focus on something else? And that's the game. It's your teammates, and try to really take away that thinking away of pain. And that's the only way to get through it, is to take your mind to somewhere else. And I used to say when I'd play, Matthew Barnaby off the ice is much different than Matthew Barnaby on the ice. I took on a persona, and once I walked into that rink or onto that ice, I became a totally different person because I couldn't be nice Matthew Barnaby the way that I played. I couldn't have friends on the other team the way that I played. So I went to a whole different spot. And I think George St. Pierre, said it. Just focus on something else. Say it's going to be the worst 2 minutes of your life when you jump into this cold tub. But then when you get in there, you say, okay, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. And it's kind of the same thing through injuries, but much more difficult.
Yeah. So a lot of the mentality monsters. Listen, I always say it's hockey players, toughest guys in the world. I'm not just saying that because you're on your Barney. It's just the absolute truth. Listen to what Ekblad had to go through and still logged unbelievable minutes. Quickly, I want to touch on just this Vegas team. If you were still playing and you had a chance to play under this Vegas team with Bill Foley, George McPhee, Kelly McCrimmon, absolutely all in for this team to win. And if you can go through some of their moves in the histories, you have coaches like Gerard Gallant, their first coach, they canned him. DeBoer, they brought in him, didn't work out. Brought in Bruce Cassidy, always going after the best of the best, making big moves. The Pietrangelo deal. Then they're bringing in Jack Eichel, Mark Stone. These are big moves for a team that wants to win. As a player, how would it feel to play under management that is completely all in to win?
Awesome. And listen, I live in the Ottawa area, so I know Pierre Dorian very well. I know there's a lot of things behind the scenes the last 10 years with Melnick as an owner, and God bless him, passing away. But when you have to deal with the financial restraints and an internal budget rather than a salary cap, that's much harder to do. And it's tough on the fans. It's tough on the players, guys like Mark Stone. You see, go to Vegas, he wins a Stanley Cup. They never wanted to trade him here, but they didn't have the wherewithal financially to keep him, or weren't willing to do it. And that wasn't Pierre. That was ownership. So I know George McPhee. I've known him, God, close to 30 years, about 25 years. Our kids are the same age. They played against each other. They played with each other growing up. So I know George very well. And you're talking about tough. That's maybe pound for pound the toughest guy to ever play in the National Hockey League. And he's ingrained that mentality, not only in his son, but in his teams that he's managed, and the way that he expects his players to play. But the commitment to winning financially from Foley, and the willingness. And again, George McPhee is one of the smartest guys. And to bring in McCrimmon to step down and take the presidency, give it over to someone, hand the keys over to McCrimmon while still having a say, man, there's nothing better as a player knowing your team is willing to do anything financially, player-wise, the way they treat the guys. And in every one of those interviews after, you can look at Jack Eichel, you can look at Mark Stone. It's a privilege to play in Vegas. And I know this from guys that have played there, talking to them, just how well treated they are and how far that goes.
Yeah, it's a real hockey town now. They got a cup, great fans. And one to speak of too is Jack Eichel. Listen, I feel like, the injury was huge. The surgeries were, very risky. It was a risky move for Vegas, but he seemed like it went all flat for him in Buffalo. I mean, just not happy, not making the playoffs. Then he goes over to Vegas and I guess, gets rejuvenated by who he gets to play with and play under, like you're saying.
Well, you're talking Jack Eichel, and he's going to compare. He's a superstar, and he compares himself, and he's always going to be linked to Connor McDavid. Now, Connor McDavid might go down as the greatest player to ever play the game. Statistically, he's never going to touch Gretzky, but he really is going to do some special things, and he will win a cup. So for him, they all have egos. Everyone's got an ego. Everyone wants to be considered the best at what they do, or in that company. And he was starting to get separated from Connor McDavid. I think that really bothered him, not making the playoffs in Buffalo, not being able to be surrounded with enough talent, because they flat out just weren't good enough for the years that he was there. So going to Vegas, that rejuvenates you. And then you go to an organization that's willing to do absolutely anything, believes by what you say in the surgery that you want to have.
Yeah.
So it's been just roses for Jack Eichel. And he was a completely different player this year to maybe the last 3 years that I've seen him play. And a big reason why they're Stanley Cup champions. And now he's got something over Connor McDavid. And I don't think we're ever going to compare him. Is he as good as Connor? I don't think we believe that, or can even make that narrative. But he's got something that this guy, this guy doesn't have, and that's a Stanley Cup. This guy, this guy's got lots of them.
Yeah, and that's the most important thing, I think, to some of these players. And listen, he led the team in the regular season with just 66 points, but in the playoffs leads the way, 26 points. So congratulations to Jack Eichel. And we'll have another chance at doing it again next season. The Vegas Golden Knights on Bet99, 12-1 to win the Stanley Cup. What do you think of their chances of repeating next year?
They're going to have some salary cap decisions to make, and they've always made hard decisions. And Kelly McCrimmon and George McPhee alluded to that fact that a lot of hard decisions were made, and they have to make them. And that's part of being management. You have to make those decisions. Colorado plus 800. That's who I like. They're going to get Gabriel Landeskog back. Obviously, that was a huge piece of them missing. They had injuries in the playoffs. So I like Colorado. They should be the favorite at plus 800. I'd have Vegas. To me, they just won, and you got to beat them. So they'd be the second favorite for me. Toronto at plus 880.
No,
I don't get it. Then you got Edmonton at plus 900, Boston plus 900, and New Jersey at plus 1100. A good young team. I think that's a little high for them. But Toronto at plus 880, second. We're a Canadian sportsbook, but I don't get it.
Yeah, you got to wait for that number to change. Changed a lot, I think, for the Maple Leafs, who still have a lot to do in the offseason, the draft coming up as well. Okay, that's it for this block. Coming up in the next block, Barney, I got a game we're going to play called What Are the Odds? So I'll leave you with the first one to marinate while we take a little break. And it's, what are the odds Aaron Rodgers and the Jets don't work out? I'll let you sit on that one. We're coming up after the break. We're going to play What Are the Odds? Me and Matthew Barnaby. All right, welcome back to the Parleh Show presented by Bet99. Albert Vartanian here with my co-host Matthew Barnaby. And as I mentioned before this break, we're going to play a game. What are the odds? So I'm going to dish out a statement to Barnaby, and he's going to handicap the statement. So example, if I ask him, hey, is Austin Matthews going to score 60 goals next year? He would say minus 100 or whatever the case may be, whatever he wants to handicap it. So the first one that I already hit him with is, what are the odds, Barney? Aaron Rodgers and the Jets don't work out this season?
Why are you trying? The odds of you trying to piss me off are way, way higher.
They are.
Pissing me off, it's minus 1,000. Of course it's going to work out. You have a 4-time MVP, 2 MVPs in the last 2 years, and he's coming in motivated. I mean, how can it work? We have Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, Lazard. Listen, he's already recruited 6 of his buddies who he believes will help him. And who knows these guys better than Aaron Rodgers? So Aaron Rodgers is motivated. We have a great coach. We have an offensive coordinator that he absolutely loves, and we have weapons. And when you have weapons and you're one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of the NFL, it has to work. Over 9.5, bet it, take it to the bank. So the odds are minus 1,000.
That's confident, Barney. I love it. Oh. If you want the Jets to win the AFC, according to Bet99, plus 880, if you're feeling really confident.
I might have a tattoo already bet on this with a buddy from the Buffalo Bills, and we might have dinner, and loser has to sit by himself while the other guy watches with a blow-up doll.
No way. That's amazing. That's what it's all about. Listen, did you hear what Kyle Brandt had to say? Actually, he had a pretty bold prediction about Aaron Rodgers, saying, I think he's going to be in the MVP conversation. I think the Jets are going to win. They'll be in the playoffs. I think he's on the same page as you, Barney.
Love Kyle Brandt. And next week's show, I will show you a tattoo that my buddy lost to me in fantasy hockey. You are going to love this one, and it's not for the faint of heart.
I love that someone actually went through it, because you always hear this, but no one actually goes through with these bets. A tattoo, that's a heavy duty commitment, Barney.
Yeah, it's a heavy duty. It's a good one.
Okay, you mentioned the Buffalo Bills. Here's the other one. What are the odds? Stephon Diggs requests a trade from the Buffalo Bills.
Even money.
Oh, okay. Why?
Even money. I mean, where there's smoke, there's fire. And when you don't attend mini camp, listen, he can request a trade. He's not getting traded.
Yeah.
He's one of the best in the game. Obviously, some issues with Josh Allen, with management, the way it's all been handled. But he's not going to get traded. But I say it's even money that he requests to get traded, but there's no way they can trade him. If they trade him, first of all, I think he makes $24 million this year. And if they trade him, it's dead cap money at $13.5 million. So even money that he requests, but no way it happens.
Yeah, I think all this frustration with him, I think this is just me, my opinion, but it has to do with, I think Buffalo just not winning. Like, he went to Buffalo. He wants to be a winner, and it's just not happening at the moment. And they should. They have the team to do it. I don't know what else they need.
The window's open. I mean, obviously a healthy Von Miller is going to help that pass rush to get to the defense where they were before. I think the running game could improve a little bit, but I mean, they should be there with Kansas City. Those are the 2 best teams in the AFC, and the AFC is just stacked this year when you think of, the Bills and KC and Cincinnati and Baltimore and the Jet. Like, all these teams are so good.
All right, next one. What are the odds? A Canadian will be in contention at the U.S. Open on Sunday.
Wow. I'll say plus 300.
Okay. And who do you like out of the Canadians?
I like Corey Connors.
I
think
the one.
I just think coming back to back after the last week of the RBC Open, it's going to be a little too much to ask. I don't think Hadwin has the game here for that. Nick Taylor, like I said, I think emotionally might be a little worn out, because that was like winning a U.S. Open or a Masters, winning it in Toronto in his home soil. So Corey Connors, I think, is the best player, gives them the best opportunity, but plus 300. This is going to be a tough task. Like I said, after round 1, and I'm watching it, if you see out of the corner of my eye, you're always going to have an amateur up there. You're going to have a couple no names up at the top of the leaderboard. But by the end, it's going to be the big boys, the John Rahms, the Rorys, the Scotty Schefflers, the Brooks Koepkas. That's what this tournament's all about, and it's going to play tough.
All right, next one. What are the odds? Sens make the playoffs next season with the new ownership kicking in, I think around maybe August or September.
I'll say plus 300 again.
Okay.
They're going to be there at the end. They're a year better. The expectation in Ottawa now has to be make the playoffs. Now, is Pierre Dorion going to be the GM? Is DJ Smith going to be the coach when Andler takes over? Obviously, you always like to bring in your own guys. My buddy Jay McKee coaches the Hamilton Bulldogs. Could we see Steve Stais as the general manager there? But This team is ready to compete for the playoffs more than ever before. They have a lot of things that they have to do. They have to find out who's going to be that number one goaltender. Is DeBrincat part of the long-term solution? Can they get him into a deal? So plus 300, because you can't be even money. You can't be minus money until you've been in the playoffs. Plus 300, I think, is a fair number.
Barney, do you know anything about Michael Andlauer? Have you met him before?
I have never met him, but again, one of my best friends is Jay McKee. I played 7 years with him in Buffalo. I coached with him with the Kitchener Rangers, and he said he is the classiest, loves to win, loves hockey, and he will do absolutely anything to bring a Stanley Cup to Ottawa. So anything I've ever heard from absolutely anyone in the hockey and even business world say the exact same thing, just epitome of class.
Yeah, that's good news. That fan base deserves it, man. A really good fan base over there in Ottawa. Love Brady Tkachuk, too. Fantastic player. Okay, I got a baseball one for you. What are the odds? Alek Manoah returns to 2022 Alek Manoah this season.
Ooh.
This is a tough
plus 500.
Yeah, I like that.
Plus 500. I listen. When you're struggling mentally, and how about Kikuchi this year? Talk about a guy that's turned his around. It's been the complete opposite of Alek Manoah. I just, there's going to be so much pressure on him when he comes back. That's the hardest part. Like, he was dealing with pressure before, playing poorly. Now all eyes are going to be on Alek Manoah. Do I think he gets back in the future? Yes. I think he's too talented. I think he's too big. He's too strong. Has too many pitches. I just don't see it happening this year. I think it's going to be a real struggle mentally for him to get back to what he did last year.
Yeah, I heard it suggested that he might get shut down this year, which I don't see happening. Chris Bassett even came out and said, listen, I've been sent down millions of times. This is just what happens. Unfortunately, it happens to a guy who was second in Cy Young voting. But I'm with you. I think he bounces back at some point. If it's not this season, it'll be next. Okay, I got another one. What are the odds the Leafs trade one of the core four this year?
Minus 200.
Okay, who do you think gets traded?
Well, you can't trade Tavares because no one's taking it.
No.
Matthews, they aren't going to trade Matthews unless he just says, I'm not signing long term. The one that makes sense is Nylander, and he is probably the best of all of them in the playoffs.
Yeah,
but
I know.
You probably get your best return for him only because of the fact that he's making the least amount of money, and the most value is in Nylander. So, yeah, I'm going to say minus 200. I think you have to change, and you got to get some more money and better defense. You look at Vegas, we can talk about Mark Stowe and Eichel and Smith and all those guys, but look at that decor. That decor is just absolutely awesome. Big, strong, physical, and talented. Minus 200. Yeah,
and if the Leafs want to be in, and there's reports that they could be in for Connor Hellebuck, you got to move some space. You need some cap space to sign these guys. Okay, the last one. This was probably my favorite, and I think you answered this earlier on in the show, but what are the odds Barney hits the golf course today?
It's off the board.
Yeah, you can't even bet it, eh?
It's off the board. It's 25 degrees and sunny, and I'm headed to the cottage to put the boat in for the weekend. So I'm not playing all weekend. So yes, off the board. I'm probably going to play 27.
I love that. That's awesome, man. Barney, you're the best. Before we let you go, you got a bet for us tonight?
Yeah, I'm going against my Red Blacks. I'm not a big CFL guy, and this is kind of where I transition. I'm so into NHL and NFL during the years and NBA playoffs. I love betting playoffs, but I love NFL as my favorite. So now I kind of transition into really, you can't focus on every single sport and every game. It's just you spread yourself thin, and you have to focus on certain things. So I'm on the Blue Jays tonight. Kikuchi pitching. Burrios was awesome yesterday, and I got Calgary -6 home opener in Ottawa. My friends are all going. They're going to have a great time. They're going to get hammered, but they're also going to see a loss. Calgary, Stampeders cover. All right, Calgary laying the 6 -114 against the Ottawa Red Blacks. Barney, as always, it's been fantastic, man. Let's talk again on Tuesday. Have a great weekend, buddy. All right, y'all, have a good round. That's Matthew Barnaby, our betting guru and former NHLer. Okay, coming up after the break, we got one more block. We're going to talk about Formula One. Yes, it's the Canadian Grand Prix this weekend in Montreal. I'll bring in Sara Poraria, and we'll break that down, preview everything, including Lance Stroll. Can he finish in a top 3 spot? Is he going to finish on the podium? We'll break that down coming up after the break.
All right, welcome back to the Parleh Show presented by Bet99. Time to talk some racing. Vroom, vroom, Sara Poraria. You smell the rubber in the air. In Montreal, we have the F1 Canadian Grand Prix going down. And who better to bring in than our F1 expert, Sara Poraria. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. I'm
you excited for this race?
I am.
Every time the F1 rolls around, you get pumped up. You're like, we talking about it? We talking about the race this weekend?
Yeah.
Here we are.
Yeah. No,
How come you're not there, dude? What are you doing?
I actually have like one of our best friends, mine and my boyfriend's, they're getting married this weekend.
Oh.
And we've had it in the books for like since last, you know how weddings are.
Yeah.
But
you can do a little bail. Fill the boost up a little bit more and be like, sorry, I couldn't be there.
Honestly, I went back and forth for a while, but I would have felt terrible.
No, you're a good friend. Okay, let's talk about the race. So in terms of this race and this track, and I've told you this, I'm not the biggest F1 guy, so I don't know everything about these things, but in terms of the track, what can we expect?
Slow corners here. There's one really epic corner. It's called the hairpin. It's this really tight knit. It resembles a hairpin on the track.
Right.
But right after that, it's a big speed grid basically. So it allows for a ton of overtaking. It's a fast-paced race, but the corners are gnarly here, and we do see a lot of drivers go into the wall. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a couple crashes here. But it's a really fun, fast-paced race, and I think the crowd also gets so into it because as Canadians, I feel like we don't have stuff like this as much. And like the Canadian Grand Prix has been around forever. It's an old race, but you know, there's so many in Europe and Asia and South America. So I think like we really pride ourselves on actually having a Formula One race every year, and it's been consistent. So it should be immaculate vibes in Montreal.
Yeah, I love it. I've actually went to one.
Yeah,
it was
that's
like,
crazy.
I can't remember how many years ago. I didn't even know who won. I didn't know what the hell was going on. But it was all Ferrari fans. I do remember that.
Usually
the
still
support
is.
for Ferrari was crazy.
Ferrari is kind of that brand, that car that you think of that idolizes and resembles Formula One.
That's Formula One,
like
right.
Every good driver has been in Ferrari probably at one point or another. I mean, there's now a lot of Red Bull fans, but you can tell it's obviously Max Verstappen fans. But you wouldn't be surprised. Like, it's not even that they're Ferrari fans now. It's just that they're Formula One fans almost.
Okay, so once again, Red Bull favorite again. I'm going through these numbers, and I'm like 17 of the last 18 Grand Prix have been won by Red Bull. This is just utter dominance.
Yeah.
Is there any chance that Checo or Verstappen don't win this race?
Probably not. I'd say Verstappen's probably a shoo-in again to win here.
Minus 278 to win.
Yeah, it's a bit boring in that sense. That's why I think last time we talked, we got to look for podiums, top six finishes, points, you know, because that's where you're going to find the value. The value for Verstappen to win, there's nothing.
Is it becoming boring to
Yeah,
you,
for sure.
watching these races? Because they have everything almost wrapped up, right?
Yeah, the thing is how I watch it is I don't watch to necessarily, I do watch to see who wins, but you look at then, like for example, Alonso this season, we've spoken about him so much. He's podiumed 5 out of the 7 times.
Okay.
And he's the oldest driver on the grid, and that's incredible for him to still be doing that. And then just the constructors race. Now we have Mercedes ahead of Aston Martin, Ferrari's in 4th place. That's kind of what I'm watching, because at the end of the day, I'm pretty positive I know Verstappen's going to finish. But before Verstappen's reign, we had Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes. We had Schumacher before that. F1 has kind of been like this for a while. Probably not as dominant as this Red Bull car and Verstappen. It is a little boring in that sense, but there's always so much happening on the grid that if you just kind of put that aside and enjoy the fun of it.
Okay, so you're expecting Red Bull to win. I'm assuming Verstappen. So let's say that. But just for betting purposes, outside of Verstappen and Sergio Perez, is there anybody that you think may have a chance at winning this thing?
Lewis Hamilton.
Really?
Hamilton and Russell both podiumed 2 weeks ago now in Barcelona. Mercedes is kind of making this sneaky comeback.
Okay.
They're second in the constructors now. And Lewis Hamilton has the most wins here at the Gilles Villeneuve circuit. He knows this track so well. And they're kind of coming into form, like we would say in football, right when they need to. They're really becoming one with their car. And I think Hamilton here to podium, what is that? Is it
to podium?
Yeah.
He is plus 104.
Okay.
To win the race, he's 11-1, plus 1100.
I don't know about winning. I don't know
Okay.
if I'd go that far. But I mean, podium, even money, that's not bad. I like that a lot. I also would keep eyes on Fernando Alonso, of course, because
Okay.
after he didn't podium actually last weekend in Spain, his home nation, he was fuming about it afterwards. And he told the press, he said, this is the last time you're not going to see me on that podium this season. So big words coming from Alonso.
That's a guarantee and a half.
Hey,
wow.
listen, I mean, he's 5 out of 7. Those are great odds. So why not take him to podium as well?
Yeah,
And
minus 127 for Alonso to podium, and as I mentioned, Hamilton plus 104. You never do me wrong in terms of podiums. I love both of those.
yeah.
Actually.
And Lance Stroll, of course.
We got to talk about Lance Stroll. So, Gilles Villeneuve, the last Canadian racer to win the Canadian Grand Prix back in 1978.
Yeah.
Can this man right here, this good-looking Canadian Lance Stroll, can he get it done, please?
I don't think so.
Come on, we need some Canadian skin in the game here.
Listen, last year, Lance Stroll finished 15th in Montreal, and the fellow Canadian Nicolas Latifi, who's no longer in Formula One, finished like 18th.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about him.
Yeah, it hasn't been good for the Canadians, but now with Alonso as his partner, with Aston Martin, Stroll is doing really well, finishing with points almost every single race this season, so that means 10 and above.
Okay.
I'd say Lance Stroll maybe to finish in the top 6.
Okay, so Lance Stroll to win
No
is
chance.
plus 12,900.
Yeah,
And you're saying top 6. Let me just bring that up quickly.
Yeah, no problem.
Who we got? Fernando's in there, minus 400. Where is Lance Stroll? Here he is, plus 129 to finish top 6.
I don't hate that. I don't hate
Okay.
that at all. And it would be his best finish at home. We also know he is from Montreal, so this is really at home. And he's going to want to do it. And I think finishing top 6 for him after, having several seasons where he's been at the bottom of the grid, this would be incredible for him. It's not a podium, it's not a win, but it's points at home in front of your home crowd. Lance Stroll top 6, I like it a lot because he's been doing so well alongside Aston Martin there. The great car this year.
Okay, so just to recap, you do expect Red Bull to win this thing. So Verstappen
How
or
can you not?
Checo, do you have a preference to?
It's Verstappen.
Okay, so Verstappen to win. It's someone who may have an outside chance of winning is Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah.
But you rather bet him in the podium. So top 3 plus 104. Alonso podium minus 127 and a top 6 finish potentially for Lance Stroll. Did I hit all of them?
Yeah, you
Okay.
did. Hey, listen, if you want to take Lewis Hamilton oh my goodness, Lewis Hamilton to win.
Little sprinkle.
Yeah, maybe a sprinkle. Maybe
Yeah.
go crazy, go out there, because it's not, I'd say like maybe after Verstappen, he could be the guy. I have no faith in Ferrari. We're not talking about them. I don't want you to lose your money.
Okay.
So yeah, why not?
Is there anything else you bet? Do you bet qualifying or do you look at practice? Like,
100%. Because it changes everything. That's the thing.
is that not even harder to predict than the race
It is
itself?
harder, but make sure you keep eyes on things like practice and qualifying going into the race, obviously, because qualifying, like we saw in Monaco a couple weeks back now, I think I had Checo to do really well in Monaco, crashed out in qualifying, finished at the bottom of the grid, P20. So you got to make sure you're keeping eyes on what happens on qualifying before race day, because if there is a crash and it affects the driver, you obviously don't want to sprinkle
I'm
any
looking
money on
at
that person.
Bet99 right now in terms of winners for qualifying. Verstappen minus 197. His partner Checo Sergio Perez plus 500. Charles Leclerc behind them at plus 600. Fernando Alonso plus 1200 to win qualifying. How do you predict that?
Listen, Charles Leclerc to finish in P1 for qualifying is not a bad sprinkle because it's one time around the lap. Ferrari's car overall is a lot faster.
I was going to say, doesn't it just come down to the car here in fastest lap?
It does. It's it's just a lot of the driver too.
Obviously, yes,
but yeah, exactly. So you could potentially see Leclerc finish at pole, but then at the end of the race, when they go, 50, 60 laps, it'll be Verstappen who probably crosses that line first. But that is not a bad sprinkle for Leclerc and Ferrari to finish pole position for the race.
Just to recap, so you're expecting Verstappen to win, Hamilton a little sprinkle to win, Hamilton podium plus 104, Alonso podium minus 127, Lance Stroll top 6, and qualifying Leclerc plus 600. Sprinkle. Yeah? I hit it all?
Yeah.
I love that. You're great. Listen, I mean, every time you come on here, I've bet it and I've won. At least one of the bets win. That's all that matters.
I feel like a lot of the ones I've given you have been good.
And they've been plus money. So listen, we're making some do-re-mi over here on the Parleh Show, powered by and presented by Bet99. Sarah, thank you so much. We'll talk again soon. Hopefully, when's the next race? I feel like I should know that. In 2 weeks?
Yeah.
So we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
All right, for Sara Poraria, Matthew Barnaby, I'm Albert Vartanian. This has been the Parleh Show, presented by Bet99.